How are bold ideas born and which ones survive to eventually shake up the status quo? We'll hear straight from our industry's greatest visionaries who are making waves and learn how they turned their dreams into disruptive reality. This is From Dreamers to Disruptors, a podcast powered by Medidata.
Welcome back to Dreamers to Disruptors here at Next London. Thanks, panel. We'll introduce you here in a second. But the premise of this podcast here today is around we're collecting more and more data. It's actually creating a lot of noise in our industry, in our organizations, and in our operational teams. And we're not necessarily running any sort of better clinical trials or getting better outcomes. So we're really going to be talking about today shifting from sort of simple data collection to truly orchestrating an experience. So let me quickly introduce our panel here. Robin Ory, we just did a panel on stage here at London Next. She is the VP of Clinical Data Management at Cadia. We've got Casey Kendrew, who is the COO of EMS Healthcare. Did I get your title wrong?
You just gave me a really nice promotion.
Oh, great. We'll work on that. Don't worry about it. And then lastly, but not least, I got Dr. Amandeep here, who is the Lakeside Healthcare and Site Insights board member. So let's kick this off. Let's just have some fun with this. So firstly, let's go into the first question here. So Robin, from a CRO perspective, what is the actual operational and financial cost when data review, central monitoring, and risk management are all live in separate vacuum tubes of data, different silos everywhere?
It's pretty big. You have everybody working on the same data, but in their own little silo. So data management is looking at it one way with one set of output, medical's using a different set of output, central monitoring is using their output, and nobody's talking to each other. So either you're all actioning the same signal in 4 to 5 different ways, or you all think everybody else is actioning the signal and nobody's looking at it. And then all of the rework that results in, we obviously can't charge for that. So as a CRO, that's a big impact to our budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cassie, sites, clinical care facilities, actually to both of you if we can, they're not IT help desks. We hear that all the time, right? So how is this explosion of separate, disconnected dashboards, all the technology that is being used by sites and point solutions actually impacted your teams and their relationships with patients, which is ultimately what we're all here for?
Yeah, we were just talking about this off camera, actually. I think, and it was touched upon in the last session, but actually the problem with all of the tech that we have, and one of the things that you were saying is, we are really big advocates for tech. We love it. The teams get so excited about new tech, and there'll be a new eco or thing coming on, and the teams are really genuinely delighted by it. And then you can see the wind kind of go out of their sails when the reality of, they're getting more questions from participants. It's not actually straightforward. It's really disfragmented or fragmented. So that's kind of, I think the reality of tech is that actually, I really suppose another example, very often we've almost kind of normalized behaviors that wouldn't be acceptable in other kind of industries. So, for example, participant IDs. We've got 5 different systems on a study at the moment, and the ID has to be manually entered into all of those different systems. And that's the participant's first kind of view of you, and you're running from kind of one tech platform to another. You've got multiple workflows you're trying to work through. And actually, the first time you're in front of a participant, you really are, it's all about building trust. And it kind of can erode that trust if you don't have a slick operation. So I think we don't really have sandbox environments to work through.
Right.
And actually that would massively help. Kay Duran in the US talks about the patient negative one. That would be huge for us if we were able to work through all of the, the participant experience kind of from start to finish on each of those different visits. I don't know what your thoughts are, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our patients will probably expect us to be able to do that anyway. And when we don't do that, and it's visible to them, frankly, it'd be quite embarrassing, really. So, we're recruiting them to a clinical trial, and actually, we haven't had the opportunity to actually go through exactly we're expecting to do. But from a data point of view, I mean, we're all professional. We want to collect high quality data for, the sponsors, the CROs that we're working with. And if the tech's not working, we're not getting the right data, there's data queries being raised, that, we then have to go back and forth about how to answer those, and that takes time, and that's not funded either as well for sites. So all that extra time that's been taken, where actually if things did run smoothly, both for the patient and for the site, the sponsor would be happy, their data management teams would be happy. I think the whole environment, the whole ecosystem would be a lot happier if, we didn't have these sort of issues and barriers.
Yeah, so Dr. Here, we'll stay with you here a second. We're all doing more complex trials. Yeah. They're not getting simpler.
No.
Was there an aha moment for you where all of these disconnected workflows, all of these disconnected data acquisition tools, when you think about all of your trial ecosystem, I'm on a clinical trial now. They're running about 22 trials across 6 different sponsors with about 6 different technologies on each and every study. Yeah. It's a real burden to them. Was there an aha moment that it's just not sustainable to have that sort of landscape of technology in the modern clinical trial complexity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we run up to 20 trials a year at the same time, different stages. So we've got recruitment, we've got follow-on, we've got close down, and all of those will have different systems. So when we onboard a new member of staff, it takes 6 months actually for them to get their accesses, get their training. And that's before they've actually really started jetting into the day-to-day activity. So, onboarding people. And then the worst thing is if somebody leaves, replacing somebody, so again, just having one system or just very few systems, even if it was one system per study, it doesn't have to be the same study system. We'd love it to be our Medidata, I'm sure, But, if it was one system that we could train our staff on and they'd have access to everything and they could transfer that training. So next time a study comes on, they don't have to be retrained. They might have to be retrained or updated on a new version. But, all of that makes things much more streamlined. And absolutely that is a want for sites. And because that makes it easier for us to recruit patients. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is to recruit patients to time, to target, on budget for our clients.
Absolutely, that's what we want you focused on. Cassie, to you, the aha moment where it's just not working with this sort of very disparate landscape.
I think it's absolutely the same. We need to be operationally agile. So we're a mobile network, site network, and we use mobile units. We take them into the community. Every other part of our kind of operation is really, really agile. Bringing people on just isn't, because that training burden, you're talking at least 2 weeks for every study. If you've got multiple studies running through a site, you're looking at, I'd say, months before you can get people up and running. And I think for us, we realise that the more complicated protocols are and the more data sources and kind of systems there were, there's only so much good people and workarounds can actually cover up. And I think as sites as well, we're not in control of kind of the systems. And it's forced upon you, so that's fine. But where we are, and I have been in control, is we've implemented CRO. So we've done that in the last 6 months. We've just rolled it out on the first 3 studies. And that at least we have got control over an element, and that's simplified that. So our aha moment for us was, this just isn't workable, and it's certainly not scalable. So at least if we control the bit that we can control, I think that's kind of the help. But
yeah. So Robin, you come at a little different angle than Cassie and Dr. here. What was the aha moment for you?
So I don't know if there was one specific moment, but we have we have early phase trials that have over 20 different external data sources. So when you put that together with all of the EDC data that you're collecting and all of the reconciliation that needs to happen, and that doesn't even count SAEs. So all of those data points that have to come together, and you have, data management doing just the high level recon between the EDC and the lab files, the missing samples. There's the CRAs that are looking at the lab if the lab is big enough, the lab provided, dashboards trying to find where things are at. Was it collected? Was it sent? What's happening? And just the disconnect there of who's managing what, and multiple issue logs and vendor communications. Like sites are getting the same queries from data managers and the CRAs, and the external vendors are everybody's getting frustrated. So we have to figure out how to streamline all of that data into a central location and make sure everybody's looking at the same thing. And those for the central labs that have those dashboards and everything, that's not validated. So you have to take what you get out of there with a grain of salt. You're taking the reconciliation and the sample tracking that you're doing there at a risk.
Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit here, maybe. And when we talk about a unified data ecosystem, we're really not talking about sort of integration through APIs, because Cassie and Dr. here, to your point, your staff are still in those systems. We just may reduce duplication, which is great. Duplication of entry, but it still means there's another system there. So we're really talking about a cross-functional paradigm shift. How does moving away from sort of reactive data cleaning and review and reconciliation weeks after the fact to proactive sort of real-time identification of signals really mitigate the risk of conducting clinical research view? We'll start with Robin, so Cassie and Dr. here can think about it from their perspective.
Sure. So, from a site perspective, you guys have the patient come in, you have the patient visit, you enter the data, and it could be 6 to 9 months to longer before anybody even looks at it and starts to issue theories. And then you guys have to go back through medical records and try to figure out what might have been happening. So, it's hard to go back and retrospectively get that information. So with the centralized platform being in that proactive signal detection, it means we're looking at the data sooner, and it might not be immediate, but hopefully within a few days or a week or at least a reasonable amount of time, that's when we're coming back to you guys with queries and getting that data cleaned and getting it locked down so we can move on to the next visit and the next subject, and not going back a year later and trying to figure out what might have been going on.
Yeah. I think from our point of view, it's, we don't even want to get it to query stage. We want to be identifying it before it gets to you. So it's, and I think CRO is definitely helping us with that as well. Our PIs have got oversight and multiple units. We've got physicians on each unit, and then the PI is, of course, necessarily on one of those sites, but has that overview of the data immediately. So from a data integrity point of view, able to question stuff, able to identify hopefully where there's kind of any anomalies. And then also it kind of supports with us looking at training and looking at trends and looking at things in the moment. So being a bit more proactive about kind of query resolution and what we can put in place in mitigation strategies.
I think for us also, it's managing our teams as well. So, having that oversight of, what is the timeline of data entry? Are we meeting the KPI that we've been given by the sponsor or the CRO to get the data on within the first 5 days, or, A data, SAE data within 24 hours? How quickly are we responding to queries? And actually managing our own team. So actually say, look, this is what you need to be focusing on. This is the, prioritizing the work. We're doing, for example, a fast recruiting high volume vaccine study. That data needs to be on there as quickly as possible. Queries need to be resolved as quickly as possible. and having access to those tools to be able to manage that. And that's one of the things I have for Sideboard of the same time is you need to be able to give the sites to empower the sites to be able to see all of this in one view, so they can see all of their iMedidata studies, and they can see actually, we're not hitting the 5-day rule for this particular study. Who's responsible for that?
Right.
How do we need to put any extra resource in? Do we need to put training in, etc.? Whereas at the moment we're waiting for the CROs to come, and when they come into the visit, they give us that feedback. But there's a time delay for that. So we want to be more active. We want to be proactive. We want to deal with it at the time rather than 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah.
And to build on that, like there's always been those KPIs for the sites. The data has to be entered within X amount of days. The queries have to be turned around. But that, until recently, hasn't been on the CRO side. It could take us a year to review the data, and nobody was saying to us what's going on. But now with all of this new technology and the trends with the signal identifications, we're now feeling that heat to get those things identified faster.
Yeah.
And actually, we want to know that. We want to know how our site is working. And if there's problems, we want to know them sooner so we can do something about it.
Yeah. Ultimately, your staff didn't get involved in sort of healthcare or clinical research to start doing the same thing over and over and over again. They want to be with the patients. They want to advance the research. So it's very important that we tie that together. So we're going to close out. We've got a couple of minutes left with a real quick fire round that I want each of you to finish the sentence. And Dr. Here, we'll start with you. The data task we do manually today that will be completely automated and invisible tomorrow is go.
Is it completely integrated sort of system between our clinical systems and our research systems. We want patients who we look after routinely, automatically being given the opportunities to take part in a clinical trial, and those systems to be fully integrated. So we're not using loads of different systems, using one system.
Mine would be manually moving data between multiple systems. So no double coordinator should ever have to enter the same data twice if this is.
Yeah.
So speaking of the manually entering data, just the different types of manual review listings. All of that data is going to be in one place. All of that data review is going to be in one place, and it's really going to allow us to focus on that critical to quality data and get rid of all of that noise that's not really necessary for the analysis, which means we're not sending unnecessary queries to the sites for them to answer. Like it's not really critical if, this date is off by, 1 day. Like that's not going to blow up the whole protocol.
Yeah. Well, I know that 20 minutes has gone really, really quick. I want to thank each of you for this very interactive panel. Thanks for attending the Innovation Day here in London. Thanks for what you do for our industry, each and every one of you, because ultimately we all want to get these treatments to patients quicker. Everybody is waiting for the output from the work that we're ultimately doing, and we really thank you for your participation and inclusion in that. So that's a wrap for Dreamers to Disruptors here in London, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's conversation. If you've been enjoying this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions for me or thoughts about the episode, drop them in the comments. I do read them. Thanks again for listening to From Dreamers to Disruptors, and we'll see you again next time.